Aurora Vargas knew the morning scent of her penthouse well. It was a blend of the nutty aroma of freshly ground single-origin coffee beans, the subtle fragrance of lilies in the vase in the living room, and the lingering trace of Narciso Moreno's cologne, which remained on the pillow next to hers. For the last 5 years, that scent had been her very definition of the word home. This morning, like hundreds of mornings before, she watched in silence, sipping her coffee, as her husband chose a suit for work in front of a colossal walk-in closet. Narciso Moreno was a charming man. Aurora had to admit it. Even after 5 years of marriage, his charisma hadn't faded. He had a strong build, a well-defined face, and a smile that could melt even the most inflexible members of any corporate board. He came from a very humble background, a fact he often embellished in stories that sounded like heroic dramas, as if he were a self-made prince who had conquered the world on his own. The irony, of course, was that the world was Aurora's. Aurora was the sole heir to a business empire her father had built from the ground up. Sterling Legacy Group, a massive conglomerate spanning real estate and luxury hotels, was now in her hands. She was intelligent, decisive, and respected in the business world, a queen on her own throne. But at home, in front of Narciso, she took off her crown. She wanted to be just a supportive wife, a partner. She had given Narciso the position of CEO of one of their subsidiaries, unlimited access to the finest amenities, and allowed him to be the public face of their shared success. To the public, Narciso Moreno was the brilliant husband who kept his wife in luxury. Few knew the truth, that Narciso was merely the moon, reflecting the light of the sun that was Aurora Vargas. "Honey, what do you think of this one for today's lunch meeting?" Narciso's voice pulled her from her thoughts. She turned her head and saw him holding 2 silk ties. One was navy blue, the other maroon. "The navy blue," Aurora answered softly. "It pairs better with your shirt." Narciso smiled broadly. It was the smile Aurora had once fallen in love with. "You always know what's best." He walked over and kissed her on the forehead. His expensive cologne enveloped her, a little strong for the morning. "I have an important meeting with those investors from Dubai. I'll probably be late." Aurora nodded. She had grown accustomed to those words. Important meetings, potential clients, new projects. The excuses had become more frequent in recent months. Before, he would tell her the details of his meetings, they would discuss strategies together. Now, his answers were always brief and vague. If she tried to probe further, Narciso would laugh and say, "Honey, don't you worry about those technical details. I'll handle it. You just sit back and enjoy the results." Something wasn't right. A small alarm in Aurora's mind had been ringing for a long time, but she kept silencing it. She didn't want to believe it. She had built this paradise with her own hands. She couldn't burn it all down over a simple suspicion. But the small pieces of evidence were piling up, like dust slowly settling on her gleaming furniture. There were credit card charges for dinners at restaurants they had never been to together. Phone calls in the middle of the night that would end as soon as she stirred in bed. A faint scent of an unfamiliar women's perfume on his suit lapel, one that didn't belong to his middle-aged secretary. Aurora tried to dismiss it as paranoia. Perhaps she was just tired. Running an empire like Sterling Legacy Group and trying to be the perfect wife was exhausting. She wanted to trust her husband, the love they had built, the love that had made her willingly hand him everything. "Oh, by the way, honey," Narciso said, adjusting his luxury watch, a gift from Aurora for their 3rd anniversary. "I'm going to need some extra funds for client entertainment expenses, about $450,000. You know, these people need to be treated well for the projects to flow." Aurora looked at him. It wasn't the first time he had asked. Until now, she had never questioned it. She would simply send a quick message to her trusted CFO, Mr. Constantine Ruiz, to transfer the money to Narciso's personal account. She believed it was part of her support as a wife, but today, a small seed of doubt sprouted. "What project is this, Narciso?" she asked, trying to keep her voice as neutral as possible. Narciso's expression flickered for a split second, but Aurora's trained eyes were quick enough to catch it. "The resort development in the Hamptons. I told you about it. It's in the final stages now. We have to pull out all the stops." Aurora remained silent. She knew every project in her company. The Hamptons resort project existed, yes, but it was barely in the initial planning phase. There were no meetings with investors scheduled, much less from Dubai. The lie was so smooth, so natural, it hurt. But Aurora simply nodded silently. "All right, I'll take care of it. Thanks, my love." Narciso gave her another kiss on the cheek, this one quicker. "I'm off. Be safe." The front door closed. Only silence remained, and the slowly fading scent of Narciso's cologne. Aurora sat motionless. The coffee in her cup had gone cold. The paradise she had built felt as if it were made of glass, beautiful and gleaming, but terribly fragile. And that morning, for the first time, she began to notice tiny cracks running across the entire surface, and she was afraid that if she touched them, everything would shatter. She picked up her phone, but it wasn't Mr. Ruiz she contacted. She opened her gallery and looked at their wedding photos. Narciso was holding her tightly, smiling blissfully. At that moment, Aurora had believed the look in Narciso's eyes was true love. Now, she wasn't sure if it was love or the look of a lottery winner who had just hit the jackpot of a lifetime. Aurora set down the cup with a small click. She had been playing blind for too long. She was a businesswoman, a leader. Her business instincts had never failed her. Why had she turned them off for her personal life? She stood up. The look in her eyes had changed. The softness around the edges was gone, replaced by the sharp glint of a CEO ready to make a tough decision. She wasn't going to destroy her paradise. She was simply going to expel the demon that had crept into it. She was going to find out the truth, no matter how bitter. And if there was a betrayal, the traitor would never know what hit him. Aurora wouldn't scream or cry. She would smile, and that smile would be the beginning of his end. The day passed in a quiet tension. Aurora executed her plan with the precision of a surgeon. She approved the transfer of the $450,000 Narciso had requested, but she instructed Mr. Ruiz to track the flow of that money. The result was what she expected. The money wasn't used to entertain investors. It was immediately transferred to another account to make a down payment on a luxury sports car, a car Aurora had never seen in their garage. At home, Aurora played her part to perfection. She remained the doting wife. She made dinner, asked Narciso about his day, and listened with a faint smile to his new lies about fictitious meetings and projects. Every lie Narciso told was another nail he hammered into his own coffin. Too drunk on arrogance and freedom, Narciso didn't notice the icy shift in his wife's eyes. He took Aurora's silence as a form of resignation, but it was the calm before the storm. That afternoon, Aurora decided to allow herself a small luxury. She headed to Fifth Avenue, the most opulent shopping district in Manhattan, lined with international designer boutiques. It wasn't that she really wanted to shop, she just needed a space to think. Away from the theater of her home, she sat in a cafe, ordered a chamomile tea, and planned her next moves. She had already contacted her friend and trusted lawyer, Diana Mendoza. Their meeting was scheduled for the next day. With her mind a little clearer, Aurora walked toward the underground parking garage. Her steps came to a halt when she saw a familiar car. She had never seen it in person, but there it was, a Porsche 911 inches of brilliant red that gleamed under the fluorescent lights. The license plate was new. It was the same car listed on the payment documents Mr. Ruiz had sent her. Her heart quickened, not with pain, but with adrenaline. The prey she was hunting was right in front of her. And sure enough, a woman emerged from the lobby door. She looked to be in her mid-20s, tall and slender, in a tight dress more appropriate for a nightclub than a shopping trip. Her face was pretty, but her eyes were full of arrogance and an air of superiority. She walked with a conceited sway toward the red sports car. Aurora simply watched from a distance. She could have left, ignored the scene, but something held her back. She wanted to see the face of the woman conspiring with her husband to betray her. The woman, whose name she would later learn was Lilith Torres, seemed to notice Aurora's presence. Her eyes scanned the surroundings until they finally met and locked onto Aurora's. A cynical, triumphant smile spread across her bright red lips. Instead of getting into the car, Lilith walked toward Aurora. Here it comes, Aurora thought. The moment of truth. She straightened up, keeping her face as impassive as possible. Hello, Mrs. Vargas, Lilith greeted with false deference, but her eyes danced with mockery. "Are you all alone?" "Hello," Aurora replied dryly. She had no time or energy for pleasantries. Lilith let out a small laugh, a sound like nails on a chalkboard. She tossed her hair back, a theatrical gesture designed to show off the diamond earrings she was wearing. They were the same model Aurora had seen in a jewelry catalog the week before. "I just wanted to say hello. It seemed rude not to, running into my lover's wife." "Don't you think?" Lilith said, emphasizing the word lover. Aurora remained silent, letting the woman continue her monologue. Slightly annoyed by the lack of the angry reaction she expected, Lilith pulled out her ultimate weapon. She raised her hand and dangled the car keys, with the Porsche logo, right in front of Aurora's face. The keychain was still wrapped in plastic. "Look," she said proudly, her voice rising as if proclaiming a great victory. "Narciso bought it for me." Lilith paused to savor the moment, then delivered the line she had prepared to destroy Aurora. "He says I'm worth way more than the boring old wife he has at home." The words didn't slap Aurora's cheek, but they were designed to hurt more than any physical blow. They were meant to stab her pride, to shatter it and make her feel insignificant. Lilith waited with eyes bright with expectation, anticipating an outburst of rage, tears, or at least a face pale with shock. She got none of it. Instead, Aurora smiled. It wasn't a sad or forced smile. It was a genuine, slight smile, filled with something Lilith couldn't understand. Amusement, as if she had just heard the funniest joke in the world. "Congratulations on your new car," Aurora said, her voice calm and clear. She got none of it. Once inside the car, with the door closed and all the outside noise blocked, Aurora's smile slowly faded. She gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white, her breathing becoming ragged. She didn't cry. Tears were a luxury she couldn't afford for this betrayal. The pain was there, sharp and piercing, but on top of it, something else was growing rapidly, a cold, glacial anger. The anger of a queen whose kingdom had been defiled by pawns who didn't know their place. The boring old wife. "I'm worth way more." Lilith's words echoed in her ears. What a pair of fools. Lilith, so proud of her gifted car, not knowing it had been bought with the money of the woman she was insulting. And Narciso, her husband, so stupid as to think he could play with the very source of all the luxury he enjoyed. They both thought they had won a battle. They didn't know that Aurora hadn't even considered this a war yet. It was just a game. And tonight, Aurora was going to flip the board. She was going to remove all the pieces, cut off all access, and leave them stranded with nothing. Aurora started the car. As she drove out of the garage, she caught a glimpse of Lilith still standing by the red car, looking bewildered. Aurora smiled again. This time, it was a smile for herself, the last smile of a wife, because the Aurora Vargas who would return home that night was no longer the wife Narciso knew. She was an executioner, ready to carry out her own verdict. Without hesitation and without mercy. The drive home felt different. The streets Aurora always traveled, the towering skyscrapers, the brilliant city lights, everything seemed foreign, as if seen through a different lens. The magnificent penthouse waiting for her at the end of the journey no longer felt like a paradise. Tonight, it felt like a grand theater stage, and Aurora was tired of playing the blind protagonist who didn't know her own script. She parked the car in the garage with precise, emotionless movements. Next to her, a wide, empty space waited the spot where Narciso's car should be, which at this hour was parked somewhere else, in another life. She entered the silent apartment. The household staff had already retired to their quarters. Only the ticking of the antique grandfather clock in the living room kept her company. Each tick-tock sounded like a countdown. She didn't change her clothes or touch the dinner that had been prepared for her. She simply sat on the ivory velvet sofa and stared at the door, waiting. Around 11 p.m., she finally heard the sound of Narciso's car. The front door opened, and he came in with a jovial smile, even humming a little tune. He looked so light, so carefree. He smelled of expensive liquor and the same woman's perfume she had smelled in the parking garage. The scent of a false victory. "Oh, honey, still up?" he asked, coming over to kiss her on the forehead. Aurora didn't pull away. She let his lips touch her skin. They felt cold, like the touch of a stranger. "I was waiting for you." "How was the meeting?" she asked, her own voice sounding normal, even to her own ears. "Incredible!" Narciso exclaimed, taking off his jacket and tossing it carelessly onto the sofa, a habit Aurora had always silently detested. The investors were completely blown away. "This project is going to be a massive success. We'll have to celebrate big." Aurora simply nodded. "I'm glad. You must be tired. Go take a shower. I'll be in a moment." Narciso, completely unable to read anything outside his comfort zone, nodded obediently. "Don't be long," he said with a playful wink before disappearing into the master bedroom. That's when Aurora moved. As soon as she heard the sound of the shower in the bathroom, she stood up and walked not to the bedroom, but to her study. That room was the command center of her kingdom, soundproofed and protected by a state-of-the-art security system. It was where she felt most powerful, most herself. She sat in her leather chair and opened the laptop connected to her company's private server. Her fingers flew across the keyboard at a terrifying speed. She didn't need to hack anything. As the majority shareholder, she had access to all financial information linked to her name, which included the joint accounts and supplementary credit cards she had given Narciso. The first screen she opened was the transaction history of the joint account for the last 6 months. Her eyes quickly scanned the rows of figures and descriptions. The $450,000 transfer from a few days ago was the starting point. Just as Mr. Ruiz had reported, the money had gone directly to the luxury car dealership. Done. The first and most blatant piece of evidence confirmed. But Aurora didn't stop there. This was no longer about the car. It was about dismantling the entire web of lies Narciso had built. She started going back in time, like an archaeologist excavating the ruins of a destroyed civilization, and what she found disgusted her. There was a clear pattern. Every time Narciso went on a business trip, there were always double transactions. One at a corporate hotel for which a report was submitted to the office, and another on a supplementary personal credit card at a romantic villa or a boutique hotel in the same area. On a 3-day trip to San Francisco last month, the official report said he stayed at a Sterling Legacy Group hotel, but the credit card statement showed a charge for a private villa with a pool in Napa Valley, along with receipts for a couple's spa treatment and dinner at a beachside restaurant famous for its romantic atmosphere. Then there were the vaguely named expenses. Client entertainment turned out to be purchases at luxury jewelry boutiques. Aurora expanded one transaction. The date matched the week before she saw the diamond earrings on Lilith's ears. Office supplies purchase turned out to be the purchase of several designer handbags at a boutique in Paris when Narciso was supposed to be at a real estate conference in Chicago. The lies were so systematic, so meticulous. Narciso wasn't just having an affair. He was building a parallel universe of luxury for his mistress, and Aurora was paying for all of it. Every cent of every luxury Lilith flaunted, every designer garment that covered her body, every drop of champagne she drank, had been bought with Aurora's sweat and her family's legacy. The pain in her heart had gone numb, replaced by a cold rage that chilled her to the bone. She opened another folder that gave her access to Narciso's phone bills. Hundreds of calls and texts to one number, a number that appeared without a name, just a series of digits. The longest calls were made late at night, the hours when Narciso claimed to be working late or unable to sleep. She didn't need to hear their conversations. The data in front of her was enough to paint a complete and disgusting picture. She saved all the evidence, making a copy on an encrypted hard drive. She compiled the evidence like a prosecutor preparing an indictment. Every bank statement, every credit card bill, every call log was a nail that would seal Narciso's fate. The sound of the shower in the bathroom stopped. Aurora glanced at the clock in the corner of her screen. She had been immersed in this for almost an hour. With a swift movement, she closed all the applications, cleared her browsing history, and shut down the laptop. She stood up, smoothed her clothes, and left the study, locking the door behind her. When she entered the bedroom, Narciso was already in bed, wearing only a pair of shorts, his hair still slightly damp. He smiled when he saw her. "There you are. I thought you'd fallen asleep out there." He patted the empty space beside him. Aurora walked to her vanity and began removing her makeup with slow, controlled movements. She could see Narciso's face reflected in the mirror, a handsome face that now looked like a grotesque mask. "I was just finishing up some emails," she lied. Lying to Narciso now felt so easy, so natural. She had learned from the master. She finished her nightly routine and finally got into bed beside him. He immediately pulled her close, wrapping his arm around her from behind and whispering in her ear, "Thank you for everything, honey. Without you, I could have never become who I am." The irony of that statement was so sharp that Aurora almost laughed. She lay still, rigid in his arms. She closed her eyes, not to sleep, but to plan. Tonight, for the first time in 5 years, she fell asleep with her back to her husband, not just physically but mentally as well. The digital trail had spoken, and in the silent courtroom of her mind, the verdict was in. All that remained was the execution. The next morning, the charade continued. Aurora woke up first, made the coffee, and sat at the table as if nothing had happened. When Narciso came down, she greeted him with the same usual smile. If he noticed anything strange, he was too engrossed in his own world to realize. He ate breakfast hastily, boasting about his plans to expand the company's wings. Aurora just listened, nodding occasionally, mentally recording every lie that came out of her husband's mouth. Aurora walked to her vanity and began removing her makeup with slow, controlled movements. She could see Narciso's face reflected in the mirror, a handsome face that now looked like a grotesque mask. "Who?" Narciso asked distractedly, more focused on his phone. "Diana." "We haven't seen each other in a long time," Aurora replied. Narciso just made a sound of acknowledgement. The name Diana Mendoza didn't raise any alarms. He knew Diana was Aurora's best friend from college. What he didn't know was that Diana was one of the most feared divorce attorneys in the city. They met in a private room at a 5-star hotel restaurant, a place where discretion was absolute. Diana was waiting. She was the opposite of Aurora. If Aurora was calm water, Diana was fire. She wore her hair short, her style was sharp, and her gaze missed nothing. "I had a bad feeling ever since you told me to meet you here, Aurora," Diana said, even before the waiter poured the water. Aurora didn't waste any time. She placed a tablet on the table and slid it toward Diana. "See for yourself." For nearly 20 minutes, the only sounds in the room were Diana's increasingly agitated breathing and the occasional muffled curse. She swiped through page after page of the documents Aurora had prepared. Copies of bank statements, credit card bills highlighted with a digital marker, call logs, and even the photo of the red sports car Aurora had surreptitiously taken when Lilith was distracted. When she finished, Diana put the tablet down sharply. Her face was red with anger. "The bastard. The ungrateful parasite. I told you from the beginning he was only after your money." Aurora remained calm. "I don't need an 'I told you so,' Diana. I need a strategy." The anger on Diana's face slowly dissipated, replaced by a cold professionalism. She switched from friend mode to lawyer mode. "Okay. First, our prenuptial agreement is ironclad. All assets in your name before the marriage, and all those derived from your family's legacy are exclusively yours. That's already safe." "And the company?" "He's the CEO of one of the subsidiaries," Aurora asked. "It's a position you gave him. You can take it away at any moment. The board will back you 100%. He doesn't have any shares in his name, right?" "Not a single one," Aurora replied firmly. "Good." Diana's eyes gleamed. "Our plan will be a covert operation. We prepare all the ammunition, the divorce petition, the termination notice, the asset freeze. We will attack on all fronts at once, when he least expects it. We will take him down so hard he won't get back up." Diana began scribbling the key points of the legal strategy in a notebook. They discussed every detail, from the division of assets to the grounds for divorce they would file with the court, infidelity and financial fraud, and how to get him out of the house without any unnecessary drama. "Most importantly, Aurora," Diana said, looking intently at her friend, "until Day, you have to act completely normal. Don't show any emotion. Don't give him the slightest reason to suspect. We need the element of absolute surprise." "Don't worry," Aurora replied, her eyes as cold as ice. "He won't suspect a thing." After lunch, Aurora didn't go home. She went straight to the Sterling Legacy Group headquarters. She greeted the employees with a friendly smile as she crossed the imposing lobby. As always, no one could guess the storm raging inside her. She called Mr. Ruiz to her office. A man in his late 50s who had worked for the Vance family since Aurora's father was alive, Mr. Ruiz entered silently and respectfully. He was the embodiment of loyalty and efficiency. He had seen Aurora grow from a child into a leader, and his allegiance had never wavered. Aurora didn't beat around the bush. She looked at Mr. Ruiz with the same gaze she would use to order a multi-million-dollar corporate acquisition. "Mr. Ruiz, I have a mission for you." "Extremely confidential and delicate," she said in a neutral voice. Mr. Ruiz nodded. "I am at your service, ma'am. I want you to prepare all the necessary documentation to regain control of all assets in my name. Convert all joint accounts to sole ownership. Prepare notifications for all banks to cancel the supplementary credit cards in Narciso Moreno's name. Contact all investment managers and revoke his access. I want to completely shut down every financial door in his name that originates from me." Mr. Ruiz listened without his expression changing, but Aurora could see a faint glimmer of understanding in his eyes. He had surely suspected something for a long time, but his professionalism had prevented him from saying anything. "All of this," Aurora continued, "is to be prepared, but not executed. Keep all documents in your personal safe. No one else can know. You will wait for my signal. When I send you a text message with a single word now, you will press all the buttons simultaneously at that very instant." "Understood, ma'am." Mr. Ruiz's voice was firm. "I will have everything ready by the end of today." "One more thing," Aurora added. "Prepare a letter of dishonorable termination for Narciso Moreno, CEO of Sterling Properties. The reason will be misappropriation of company funds for personal gain. Attach the evidence of the transfers you already have." This time, a flicker crossed Mr. Ruiz's eyes, not of surprise, but of satisfaction. "It will be a pleasure, ma'am." After Mr. Ruiz left, Aurora leaned back in her chair. She looked out at the city skyline from her high-rise office window. She felt tired, but also powerful. Her allies were now in position. The lawyer had prepared the legal cannons. The financial manager was ready to cut the supply lines. She had placed all her chess pieces. Now she was a general on a hilltop, observing the battlefield, waiting for the right moment to order the dawn attack. All she had to do was keep acting for a few more days, to dance one last dance with a husband who didn't know his music was about to stop. The following days felt like walking underwater. Time passed slowly. Every movement was heavy and calculated. For Narciso, nothing had changed. The world still revolved around him. The sun still rose for him. He didn't realize he was dancing on the edge of a cliff, to the tune his wife was playing the unseen director. Aurora played every note to perfection, leading him toward his inevitable end. She became an even better wife than she had been. She greeted him at home with a warm smile. She listened attentively to his fictional stories and even offered him clever advice on his imaginary projects. She was an award-winning actress on the stage of her own theater. She cooked his favorite dishes, made sure his shirts were perfectly pressed, and let him believe he was the king of this palace. Narciso's confidence inflated to dangerous levels. He interpreted Aurora's sweetness as a sign of resignation, her silence as proof that she had accepted her role as a docile provider. He became more careless, more arrogant. He no longer tried to hide the scent of Lilith's perfume on his shirt collar, assuming Aurora was too stupid or too scared to notice. One evening, he came home with a small velvet box. He handed it to Aurora with the smile of a philanthropist. "For you, my love." Aurora opened the box. Inside was a common silver designer brooch, adorned with a few cubic zirconia stones that glittered falsely. It was a piece of jewelry she would never wear, a cheap object that felt like an insult compared to the collection she had inherited from her mother. She knew this was hush money, a small offering to placate whatever conscience might prick Narciso from time to time. "Thank you, Narciso. It's beautiful." Aurora's voice sounded sincere. She even allowed him to pin the brooch onto her blouse. She looked at herself in the mirror, seeing her husband standing behind her with a satisfied smile. To Aurora's eyes, the brooch looked like a badge of shame. The night of judgment arrived a week after Aurora's meeting with Diana. Narciso was getting ready to go out. He was wearing his best suit. He had generously sprayed himself with cologne and seemed extremely excited. "Tonight's the night, honey," he said to Aurora, who was reading in bed. "I'm having dinner with my biggest potential investor. If this deal closes, we'll be opening a branch in Dubai." Aurora closed her book. She knew, thanks to the tracker she had secretly installed in his car, that his destination wasn't a business hotel, but the most romantic and expensive French restaurant in the city, the same restaurant where Narciso had proposed to her. The irony was delicious. "Do you need anything for tonight?" Aurora asked, playing her part. Narciso's face lit up. This was the bait he had been waiting for. "Ah, glad you asked. I was a bit worried about my credit card limit. After the car thing the other day, I haven't had time to sort it out. I don't want to have an embarrassing moment at the register when I'm treating someone so important." He paused, waiting for Aurora to offer a solution. "And?" Aurora asked, feigning innocence. "Could you transfer some cash to my account, just in case? Let's say $1 million. I promise you, it will be the best investment we've ever made." His voice was filled with greed. $1 million, a fantastic sum, asked for as casually as if he were asking for candy. That money would never be an investment for the company. It would be the fund for a lavish Dubai vacation for him and Lilith, under the guise of a business trip. Aurora looked at him for a long moment. A beat of silence. Narciso grew nervous, thinking he might have asked for too much. Then, Aurora smiled a smile so soft, so full of love. $1 million, a fantastic sum, asked for as casually as if he were asking for candy. That money would never be an investment for the company. It would be the fund for a lavish Dubai vacation for him and Lilith, under the guise of a business trip. The tension left Narciso's shoulders instantly. He let out a laugh of relief, came to the side of the bed, and hugged Aurora tightly. He kissed the top of her head, inhaling the scent of her hair. "You're the best wife in the world, Aurora. I'm so lucky to have you," he whispered. And he meant it. He truly believed his own words. In his small mind, he really did feel lucky. He had it all: a rich, docile wife, a young mistress who adored him, and a life of luxury without having to lift a finger. Aurora didn't return the hug. Her arms simply remained at her sides. She closed her eyes, letting that last lie wash over her. She could feel the steady beat of Narciso's heart against her back, the heartbeat of a man who didn't know his life was about to end in a matter of hours. It was the serpent being embraced by its prey, enjoying one last moment of warmth before injecting the venom. "I hope it goes well tonight," Aurora said when he finally let her go. "Of course it will," Narciso replied confidently. He grabbed his car keys, blew Aurora a kiss, and left the room with the stride of a conqueror. "Could you transfer some cash to my account, just in case? Let's say $1 million. I promise you, it will be the best investment we've ever made." His voice was filled with greed. Aurora looked at him for a long moment. A beat of silence. Narciso grew nervous, thinking he might have asked for too much. Then, Aurora smiled a smile so soft, so full of love. "I hope it goes well tonight," Aurora said when he finally let her go. She picked up her phone from the nightstand. The screen lit up, showing the contact, Mr. Constantine Ruiz. Her finger hovered over the keyboard, ready to type the single word that would bring everything crashing down. Without hesitation, she typed a single word. "Now." She pressed send. The message was gone. 2 blue checkmarks appeared instantly. Sent and read. Elsewhere in the city, in an office still lit, a brief text message was received. Without delay, without question, a cascade of digital commands was executed with military precision. Emails were sent to the board of directors, notifications were dispatched to every bank, and orders were executed in the investment systems. In less than 5 minutes, the financial universe Narciso believed was his had ceased to exist. Aurora placed the phone face down on the nightstand. She stood up, went to the bathroom, and turned on the hot water in the shower. She washed her body as if cleansing the residue of 5 years of lies from her skin. When she emerged, wrapped in comfortable silk pajamas, she felt lighter than she had in months. The curtain had fallen. The performance was over. Now, she just had to wait for the lead actor to realize he had been left alone on a dark stage. Meanwhile, across town, Narciso and Lilith were on top of the world. They sat at the best table in the French restaurant, the very one where Narciso had knelt before Aurora years ago. They ordered the most expensive menu, lobster thermidor, a 5 Wagyu steak, and a bottle of Dom Perignon. "To us, babe," Narciso said, raising his glass. "And to our future in Dubai." She pressed send. The message was gone. 2 blue check marks appeared instantly. Sent and read, "Whatever you want. Gorgeous." "The sky's the limit," Narciso promised. He felt invincible. He had conquered Aurora, he had her money, and now he had this beautiful young woman by his side. He was the king of the world. Lilith laughed delightedly, clinking her glass against his. "I can't wait. I've already been looking at apartments in the Burj Khalifa. The views will be incredible." A few minutes later, the waiter returned with a slightly uncomfortable expression. "I'm sorry, sir. The card has been declined." Narciso's smile froze. "Declined? Impossible. Try it again. The terminal must be faulty." The waiter nodded, left, and returned with the same expression. "It's still not working, sir. It says to contact the bank." They enjoyed their dinner leisurely, laughing and planning their life of opulence. When the check arrived, the figure was astronomical. Narciso simply smiled. He pulled out the black metal credit card he was always so proud of and handed it to the waiter like a sultan. "Of course not," Narciso snapped, humiliation starting to set in. "It must be a banking system error." He pulled another card from his wallet, a platinum one. "Try this one." The result was the same. Declined. He tried another. Declined. A cold sweat began to form on Narciso's temples. He could hear the whispers from the other tables. Lilith's adoring face was now a sneer of contempt. Lilith's face began to change. "What's wrong, Narciso? Don't tell me you forgot to pay the bill." His heart stopped. Impossible. He knew Aurora had transferred $450,000 just a few days ago, and he always kept at least $20,000 in his main account for emergencies. He tried again, this time selecting check balance. The screen showed a figure that made him dizzy, $17.45. Panic seized him. He took a deep breath. Calm down. It must be a system glitch. He pulled out his phone and, with trembling hands, opened his mobile banking app. He had to enter his password and fingerprint. When the app opened, he felt his world collapse. The same figure stared back at him from his phone's screen, $17.45. All his account savings, investment showed a balance of zero or minuscule figures. It was as if a giant black hole had sucked away all his wealth. He returned to the table, his face pale. "Well?" Lilith asked sharply. "There must be a major problem with the banking system tonight. I can't access any of my accounts." His voice sounded weak. Lilith looked at him with disgust. "A banking problem? Or were you broke this whole time and just putting on a show?" "I'm not broke," Narciso hissed in a low voice, drawing the attention of the entire restaurant. To resolve the embarrassing situation, Lilith had to pay with her own card, complaining endlessly. The ride back in her red sports car was cold and silent. The fire of their relationship had evaporated along with Narciso's account balance. As soon as they reached Lilith's apartment, Narciso tried to contact the bank's customer service, but it was after hours. He didn't know what to do. He felt isolated, disconnected from the world that sustained him. In his panic, only one rational explanation came to mind. This has to be Aurora's doing. Maybe she had made a huge purchase, or a hacker had attacked their accounts. Not for a moment did he consider that it could be a deliberate action by his docile wife. He had to go home. He had to talk to Aurora, maybe yell at her, demand an explanation. He drove toward his home in a state of confusion, leaving behind Lilith, who watched him with a cold stare from her apartment window. He didn't realize he was speeding toward his own judgment, one where the judge, jury, and executioner were the same person, the very woman waiting for him silently at home. Narciso's drive home was a living hell. His thoughts raced faster than the car, trying to piece together an impossible puzzle. A system failure? It couldn't be that every bank, at the same time, had a problem only with his accounts. A hack? Who would hack him? He'd never been that important. Every path in his mind led back to one name, Aurora. But his assumptions were still vague and unfocused. Maybe Aurora had made a big purchase without telling him, and drained the joint account. Yes, that had to be it. Women didn't know how to control their spending, or maybe she had gotten scared about something and moved the money to a safe place. How stupid. She didn't understand how money worked. Anger gave him energy. The humiliation he had suffered in front of Lilith and the restaurant patrons transformed into a burning fury. He had found someone to blame, and Aurora was the easiest target. He pictured himself bursting through the door, yelling at his wife, demanding an explanation for her carelessness, and then magnanimously forgiving her after she cried and apologized. The scenario gave him back a sliver of the control he had lost. When he turned onto the long driveway, flanked by perfectly manicured gardens, the grandeur of the place felt like a slap in the face. The garden lights were on, illuminating the facade of the building, which looked serene and peaceful, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside him. He parked the red sports car, which had been his symbol of triumph, with a screech of tires, a violation of the night's stillness. He slammed the car door and strode toward the main entrance. He didn't need to use his key. The massive mahogany door was ajar. He stepped inside, ready to unleash his fury. "Aurora!" His voice echoed in the empty foyer. "Aurora Vargas, where are you?" There was no answer from upstairs. He thought she must be asleep, oblivious to the disaster that had occurred. His anger grew. He crossed the expansive living room and headed for the master bedroom, but his steps faltered. In the dimly lit family room, under the warm glow of a reading lamp, he saw her. Aurora was not asleep. She was sitting in her favorite armchair, dressed in silk pajamas, a hardcover book resting in her lap. On a small table beside her, a cup of tea still gave off a faint wisp of steam. She looked so calm, so serene, as if enjoying a peaceful evening. The scene was so wrong, so discordant with the chaos Narciso felt, that it threw him off balance. Aurora looked up from her book. Her eyes met his. She didn't seem surprised or scared. She simply watched him with an impassive face. "You're back?" she asked, her voice flat. Aurora's calmness was like gasoline on the fire of Narciso's anger. "Am I back? I just had the most humiliating night of my life, and you're asking if I'm back?" His voice rose, shattering the elegant quiet of the room. Aurora closed her book with a slow movement and placed it on the table. She did not get up from her chair. "Humiliating? Why? Why?" Narciso laughed scornfully, pacing in front of her like a caged lion. "Because all of our cards were declined. I tried to get money from the ATM, and the balance was zero. I don't know what you've done with our money, but you've bankrupted us, you know that?" Aurora took a sip of her tea. "They are not our cards, Narciso. They are my cards, and I am not bankrupt. My finances are perfectly fine." The calm, logical response frustrated Narciso even more. "What do you mean yours? We're married. What happened to all the accounts? What the hell did you do? Did you buy something expensive? Diamonds? Handbags? Explain yourself, Aurora." He pointed a finger at her, trying to be menacing. "I didn't buy anything today," Aurora replied with astonishing patience. "Then why is all the money gone? Don't tell me we've been scammed, or hacked." "Oh my God, Aurora, that has to be it. We have to call the police, right now. All our assets." "My assets are fine," Aurora interrupted him again. Her voice was still calm, but this time with a sharp, cold edge. "It seems the problem is only with your access." Narciso stopped pacing. That last sentence finally cut through the fog of his anger. "The problem is only with your access." That no longer sounded like an accident. It sounded intentional. He looked at his wife. He really looked at her for the first time that night. The woman sitting before him was not the Aurora Vargas he knew. There was no softness, no resignation. There was something alien in her eyes, something hard as steel. A terrible premonition crawled up his spine. He felt like prey that has just realized it has walked into a trap. What do you mean?" he asked, his voice now stripped of all arrogance with a slight tremor. Aurora set down her teacup. She looked him directly in the eyes, a gaze so piercing that Narciso felt naked. Silence filled the room. Only the ticking of the grandfather clock seemed to grow louder, counting down the last moments of the life Narciso knew. Narciso swallowed hard. His throat felt dry. He wasn't yelling anymore. He moved closer, standing over Aurora, who remained seated. It was an awkward posture, having to lean down slightly to look at his wife. "Aurora," he whispered, his voice now pleading, "tell me what's going on." His inner storm had subsided, replaced by a cold, dense fear. He looked at his wife's face, the face that had until now been his guarantee of security and luxury, and for the first time, he realized he didn't know her at all. "What did you do?" he asked again. The phrase that had been an accusation was now a desperate question. Hearing that desperate question, something finally shifted inside Aurora. The mask of calm she had worn for days didn't crack, it was deliberately discarded. Her expressionless face slowly transformed into a smile that didn't reach her eyes, a cold, commanding smile, with a hint of disappointment. The smile of a goddess passing sentence on a mortal who had offended her. "What did I do?" she repeated softly. "I simply took back what is mine." Narciso looked at her, confused. "Yours?" "Aurora, we built all of this together." Aurora let out a short, dry, humorless laugh. "Don't delude yourself, Narciso. Not even now. You built nothing. You were a guest I allowed to stay in my castle, whom I allowed to wear my king's clothes, whom I allowed to play with my toys." Each word was a slap. Narciso took a step back as if he had actually been struck. "What? What are you talking about?" Aurora didn't answer. She reached for the side table, not for her teacup, but for a thick manila envelope that had been lying there, unseen in the dim light. She dropped it on the coffee table between them and opened it. "You wanted an explanation, right? Fine, let's begin." She spoke in the tone of a CEO chairing a board meeting. She pulled out the first sheet. It was a large, glossy photograph. A picture of Lilith leaning arrogantly against the red Porsche with a triumphant smile. The photo, taken from an angle Lilith hadn't noticed, perfectly captured the essence of her hubris. Narciso's face instantly went pale. He recognized the woman, recognized the car. He opened his mouth to speak, to search for a denial, an excuse, but no sound came out. Aurora didn't wait. She placed the next sheet on top of the photo. It was a copy of a bank statement. Several transactions were highlighted in yellow. "This is the $450,000 transferred from my account to yours, and right below it, the down payment for this car to the dealership from your account. A car you bought her with my money, which she proudly showed to me, telling me she was worth way more than the boring old wife you have at home." Aurora repeated Lilith's words in a flat, emotionless tone that made them 1,000 times more cutting. Narciso gasped. He never imagined Lilith would be so stupid. Aurora continued, placing the evidence down one by one on the table, stacking it like cards in a game she had already won. "This," she said, dropping a series of credit card bills, "is proof of your stay in a romantic villa in Napa, on the exact dates you were supposed to be at a conference in San Francisco, complete with a bill for a couple's spa treatment. This receipt from a jewelry boutique is for the diamond earrings she's probably wearing right now. And this other stack of bills, designer bags, expensive dinners, countless gifts, all justified as client entertainment or expenses. You didn't just cheat on me, Narciso. You committed fraud inside your own home. You misappropriated funds from your primary source of financing." Narciso stared, stunned, at the pile of papers on the table. It was his entire life of lies, laid out in an orderly, documented fashion. There was no room for denial, no space for excuses. He had been caught so flagrantly, so humiliatingly. He broke, his knees gave out, and he collapsed onto the thick rug in front of Aurora. His image as a successful, powerful man had been shattered in a matter of minutes. "Aurora, he stammered, searching for words. "I can explain. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Please, forgive me." Tears began to stream down his cheeks. The tears of a man who didn't regret his actions, but being caught. Aurora looked down at him from her chair. Her position was now elevated, looking down at the man kneeling at her feet. She felt no compassion, no pity, only relief. "It's too late for apologies," Aurora said softly. "Your game is over." She pulled the last document from the envelope, the thickest one, stapled together. She slid it across the table until it stopped right in front of the kneeling Narciso. "What's this?" Narciso whispered, his teary eyes fixed on the document's cover page. "The divorce petition," Aurora replied. "My lawyer filed it this morning. With all this evidence, the process will be very swift. You will get nothing. Our prenuptial agreement is very clear." Narciso looked from the document back to Aurora, utter desperation now etched on his face. "No, Aurora, please don't do this. I love you. I'll leave her, I promise. We can start over. Think of our 5 years together." "5 years that I paid for," Aurora retorted sharply. "And love? Don't make me laugh. You didn't love me. You loved my money, the comfort it provided, the status you gained by being at my side, and now all of that is ending." Aurora finally stood up from her chair and walked toward the door of the family room, her movements elegant and decisive. "Get out of my house, tonight." Her voice echoed in the silent room. "All your privileges have been revoked. That sports car will be repossessed by the dealership tomorrow morning, as I will not be making the payments. Your expensive clothes, your watches, everything in this house is mine. You can take the clothes you're wearing." She paused in the doorway, looking back at Narciso one last time. He was still kneeling on the floor, sobbing amidst the pile of evidence of his betrayal. "You came into my life with nothing," Aurora repeated, a phrase she had rehearsed in her mind, "and you will leave the same way." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Narciso alone in the ruins of his life. The last smile of a wife had been delivered, and with it, the door had been closed forever. The sound of Aurora's footsteps receding on the marble floor was the most deafening thing Narciso had ever heard. Each step was like a giant hammer, shattering what was left of his world. He remained kneeling on the floor, surrounded by the printed evidence of his own stupidity. The air in the room felt heavy, pressing down on his chest, making it hard to breathe. The silence Aurora left behind was more terrifying than any scream. For a moment, he didn't move. His brain refused to process the reality. This had to be a nightmare. He would soon wake up in his comfortable bed with Aurora beside him, and all this would be a fantasy created by his guilty conscience. He squeezed his eyes shut, willing everything to return to normal when he opened them, but when he did, the pile of papers was still there. The divorce petition was still staring at him with its cold black letters. The denial phase shattered, replaced by a wave of overwhelming panic. He had to do something. He couldn't let this happen. He couldn't lose everything. With a panicked motion, he scrambled to his feet, his legs feeling like gelatin. He ran out of the family room, his eyes frantically searching for Aurora. He saw her at the foot of the grand spiral staircase, one hand on the banister, about to go up. "Aurora, wait!" he yelled, his voice raw from crying and desperation. Aurora stopped, but didn't turn around. Her back, straight and proud, looked like an impenetrable wall. Narciso ran to her and grabbed her arm. His touch felt wrong, like touching a statue of ice. "Please, don't do this. Let's talk. I'll do anything." Aurora finally turned, but her gaze didn't go to his face. She looked down at his hand, gripping her arm with an expression of disgust. Slowly, as if he'd been electrocuted, Narciso let go. "There is nothing more to talk about, Narciso," Aurora said, her voice without the slightest tremor. "Everything has been said. But I love you," Narciso tried, his last weapon. The words that had always managed to melt her. "I know I made a mistake, a huge one, but that doesn't mean I don't love you." Her. "She's nothing, just a distraction. You are my world, Aurora." The manipulation that had once been so effective now sounded hollow and pathetic. Aurora finally turned, but her gaze didn't go to his face. She looked down at his hand, gripping her arm with an expression of disgust. Slowly, as if he'd been electrocuted, Narciso let go. Desperation made Narciso lose his reason. He couldn't accept defeat. "I'm not leaving," he shouted, his voice bouncing off the high walls of the foyer. "This is my house too. I'm your husband." At the top of the stairs, Aurora stopped and looked down at him. Their positions were now completely inverted. She was the queen on her palace balcony, looking down on him. "You are no longer my husband. And this was never your house." Now leave with what little dignity you have left, or I will have you removed without it." The threat made Narciso's blood boil. "You can't throw me out." Aurora didn't reply. She simply took out her phone, pressed a speed dial number, and held it to her ear. "Head of security, please come to the foyer. Now, I have a guest who is refusing to leave." Less than a minute later, two large, stone-faced men in security uniforms entered through a side door. They were the head of security and his subordinate, the same men who had always greeted Narciso with respect, opened doors for him, and called him sir. They stopped in front of Narciso, taking an alert stance. The senior one, the head of security, looked at Narciso with an apologetic but firm expression. "I'm sorry, Mr. Moreno. The lady has requested you vacate the property." This sight was the pinnacle of humiliation, being escorted out of his own home by his own employees. Narciso's face turned red with rage and shame. "You can't touch me. I pay your salaries." "Our salary is paid by Mrs. Vargas, sir," the security chief replied calmly. "Please don't make this more difficult." Narciso looked at the two guards, then up at Aurora, who was still watching from the top of the stairs like a director, ensuring the final scene played out according to the script. He realized he had lost. Physical resistance would only add to his list of humiliations. Completely defeated, his shoulders slumped, he turned around. He walked past the two uniformed men and toward the front door that was still ajar. Every step felt like he was carrying a ton of weight. He didn't dare look back. He didn't want to see the triumphant smile he imagined on Aurora's face, though he suspected there might not be a smile at all, just emptiness. As he crossed the threshold into the cool night air, he heard a voice behind him. "One moment," Aurora said from the top of the stairs. A stupid spark of hope flickered briefly in Narciso's heart. Has she changed her mind? He stopped and slowly turned. Aurora wasn't looking at him. She was looking at his hand. "Leave the car keys on the console table by the door. That car is not yours." The hope died as quickly as it had come. The final humiliation. Without a word, he fumbled in his pockets and pulled out the keys with the Porsche logo, the symbol of his glory just hours before. He stepped back inside, dropped them with a small clatter onto the marble console table, and walked out again without looking at anyone. As soon as he was outside, the heavy mahogany door closed behind him with a firm, final click. The sound of the lock turning from the inside was a clear, definitive seal on his fate. He was left alone in the dark driveway. Behind him, a palace full of light and warmth. In front of him, darkness and uncertainty. He looked at the red sports car, which now seemed like a monument to his stupidity. He couldn't even leave in it. He checked his pockets, only his wallet full of useless cards and his phone. He opened his ride-sharing app, only to realize with horror that his digital wallet balance was also zero. He had nothing. Absolutely nothing. He sank onto the cold cobblestones, in front of the gates of the home he could never enter again. His choked sobs were lost in the silence of the night. The door was closed, and behind it, his 5 years of glorious life were gone forever. 1 year later. A year passed. The seasons changed, and so did lives. For Aurora, that year was a process of detoxification and reconstruction. The divorce was swift and efficient, just as Diana had promised. With the overwhelming evidence, Narciso had no ground to fight on. He vanished from Aurora's life as quickly as he had entered, leaving only a fading mark. Aurora threw herself back into her work with renewed energy. Without the emotional burden and the exhausting theatrics, her mind was sharper, her decisions bolder. Sterling Legacy Group launched 2 new luxury hotel projects and acquired a rival real estate firm. Under her sole leadership, her business empire shone brighter than ever. Aurora threw herself back into her work with renewed energy. Without the emotional burden and the exhausting theatrics, her mind was sharper, her decisions bolder. Sterling Legacy Group launched 2 new luxury hotel projects and acquired a rival real estate firm. Under her sole leadership, her business empire shone brighter than ever. One sunny Sunday afternoon, Aurora was sitting with Diana at a trendy rooftop cafe in downtown Manhattan. They were enjoying coffee and cake, watching the bustling streets below. A gentle breeze played with Aurora's hair, now longer. "I haven't seen you this happy in a long time, Aurora," Diana said, smiling sincerely at her friend. I feel like I just got out of a prison I built for myself, Aurora replied, her gaze lost in the distance. Funnily enough, I don't even hate him anymore. I feel nothing. It was just a very expensive business lesson. Diana laughed. A lesson that's made you billions, you mean? And they both laughed together. It was then, in the midst of their laughter, that Aurora's attention was drawn to a small commotion at the intersection below. An old, beat-up sedan, a model that had been popular about 20 years ago, had stalled in the middle of the road. Dense white smoke billowed from under the hood, creating a pathetic and comical scene. Drivers behind began honking incessantly. A man got out of the driver's side of the old car. He wore a faded t-shirt and jeans with a small tear in the knee. His hair was a bit long and unkempt, and his face looked tired under the afternoon sunday. He pried open the hood with a rough movement, only to jump back as a puff of hot steam hit him in the face. Aurora narrowed her eyes. There was something familiar about the man's posture. Just then, the passenger door flew open. A woman stormed out, yelling. She was wearing a dress that was too tight for the heat and too much makeup. She jabbed a finger at the driver, furious, her movements filled with drama. Diana's eyes widened as she followed Aurora's gaze. Wait a minute, is that? Aurora nodded silently, not taking her eyes off the scene below. The man was Narciso, and the woman was Lilith. They looked so different. The aura of luxury and arrogance that had once surrounded them was completely gone, replaced by an air of desperation and irritation. Narciso no longer looked like a charismatic young executive. He looked like a middle-aged man defeated by life. Lilith no longer looked like a high society mistress. She looked like a disgruntled woman trapped by bad luck. I told you to get this car fixed, but you never listened to me. Lilith's shrill voice carried faintly up to the rooftop. Now look, we're going to be late. How embarrassing. Shut up, Narciso retorted, his voice weary. You think I have money to fix it? We can barely make rent and buy your new handbag. Their street-side fight amidst the smoke and honking horns was a tragicomic spectacle, the symbol of their downfall, on display for the world to see. The red sports car had become a smoking wreck. The luxury apartment had become a small rental. The love based on materialism had crumbled when the material disappeared. Seeing that scene, seeing the two people who had once caused her so much pain now hurting each other over trivial matters, Aurora couldn't help it. A small laugh escaped her lips. The laugh grew, louder, freer, until it finally erupted into a full-throated peal of laughter. She covered her mouth, trying to contain it, but tears of amusement began to well up in her eyes. It wasn't a bitter laugh or a laugh of vengeful satisfaction. It was pure and genuine, the kind of laugh that comes from realizing how absurd life can be. She laughed at the irony of fate, she laughed at their stupidity, and she laughed at the past Aurora who had once considered that man her world. Diana watched her for a moment, and then a wide smile spread across her face, relieved to see her friend finally free from all the baggage of the past. Still, with remnants of laughter, Aurora lifted her half-finished coffee cup. She raised it slightly toward the scene below, toward Narciso and Lilith, who were still arguing heatedly a silent toast. To karma, which sometimes arrives not in the form of thunder and lightning, but as the best kind of comedy. And then she turned away, drank her coffee, and began talking to her friend about the future.